From the moment she stepped into the small neighborhood bakery, soaked from the unexpected drizzle and shivering from cold, everything about her presence spoke of silent battles and weary nights. But the most heartbreaking part wasn't her trembling hands or her faded clothes, it was the way she clutched a single coin in her palm as if it were her last lifeline in a world that had long stopped being kind. And when she whispered to the baker, barely audible, asking if she could buy just one slice of bread, the room fell into a stillness that felt heavier than her desperation. That was the moment a man sitting in the corner, a man dressed in quiet authority, a man carrying the weight of his own struggles, slowly stood up. He was the kind of man who rarely interfered in anything, but that day he did. And nothing that came after would ever be the same again. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity that still shines in unexpected places, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Silent Hope. Your support helps these stories reach those who need them most. Her name was Amara. For months, life had been testing her beyond measure. A once promising tailoring assistant, she had lost her job when the small shop she worked for shut down during a market crash. 1 week turned into two into months, and with every sunrise that rose over the city, she felt further and further from the life she once recognized. Her landlord, who had once been understanding, had grown tired of her struggling promises. The electricity was gone, then the gas, and finally, she found herself packing her few belongings into an old cloth bag and leaving the only place she had called home. She had lived the past few nights in a small abandoned shed behind a bus station, surviving on water and odd leftovers offered by strangers. She had walked into the bakery simply because the smell of fresh bread had awakened a memory, her mother baking simple, warm bread in their little village home when Amara was still a child, a time before grief and poverty had carved lines across her life. That single slice of bread felt like the thin string connecting her to hope. Just one slice, that was all she asked for, all she could afford with her last coin. The bakery owner, a middle-aged woman with kind but helpless eyes, hesitated. She recognized Amara. The young woman had been coming by frequently these past weeks, always asking for the cheapest thing she could buy, always walking away with her head lowered. But today, even the owner's heart clenched. She knew things had gotten worse for Amara. She also knew that giving things away for free wasn't something she could afford. Her own business was barely surviving. Before the owner could respond, the man from the corner approached. He had been sitting alone, papers spread on the table, a cold cup of coffee untouched beside him. His name was Rayan Khan, a single father, a quiet presence in the neighborhood. And what people didn't know was that he was also the CEO of a rapidly expanding logistics company. Despite his success, he avoided extravagance, and he always carried a weary gentleness in his eyes, the kind that came from raising a child alone after losing his wife 3 years earlier. Rayan walked toward Amara with a slow, steady calm, as though he didn't want to startle her. When she looked up at him, their eyes met hers, filled with shame, his filled with something she hadn't seen in a long time, concern without judgment. He didn't look at the coin in her hand, nor at her torn shoes or her tear-stained face. Instead, he said softly that she should sit down. Just sit down. Eat first. Worry about everything else later. There was a firmness in his voice, the kind that left no room for refusal but still felt warm. Amara froze, uncertain whether to feel grateful or embarrassed. But exhaustion overpowered everything. She sat at a table near the window, her fingers trembling as she tried to hold back tears. Within minutes, Rayan ordered a warm plate, bread, butter, eggs, and a small bowl of soup. When the food arrived, steam rising gently from the plate, Amara stared at it as if afraid it would disappear. She ate slowly at first, almost in disbelief, and then hunger took over. Every bite tasted like relief. She didn't know that tears were sliding down her face until she felt the warmth on her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, hoping no one noticed, but Rayan had. He remained near the counter, pretending to check messages on his phone, giving her space but watching closely enough to make sure she was okay. Rayan was no stranger to hardship. After losing his wife to an illness that drained their savings and shattered their world, he had struggled to raise his little daughter, Noor, while building a company. There had been nights when he stayed awake, fighting loneliness and fear, wondering if he could handle everything. He had survived those nights only because a friend had once stepped in, unexpectedly, offering help without asking for anything in return. Maybe that was why, when he saw Amara's desperation, he couldn't stay silent. When she finished eating, Amara whispered that she would pay him back someday. She couldn't accept help for free, not after being turned away so many times in life, not after learning that nothing came without a price. But Rayan simply asked if she had anywhere safe to stay. Her silence told him the truth. He asked the bakery owner for a takeaway bag, adding an extra bread and a few pastries. Then he turned back to Amara and asked if she would walk with him. At first, she hesitated. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. But something about him, perhaps the sincerity in his eyes, perhaps the memory of how he spoke to her with respect when most people looked at her with pity, gave her the courage to follow him. Rayan led her to a nearby community service center, a place that offered temporary shelter for women in crisis. He spoke to the manager personally, ensuring they found space for her. Amara stood in stunned silence as the volunteers prepared a cot for her and gave her a warm blanket. She had expected nothing more than a hot meal today. Instead, she had found a roof over her head. That night, Amara cried quietly under the blanket, not out of sadness, but out of the overwhelming relief of finally being seen, understood, and helped without being judged. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in months, she fell asleep without fear. The next morning, the community center arranged basic clothing for her and a place to shower. When she walked outside feeling clean, warm, and rested, she almost didn't recognize herself. And waiting outside the center, leaning casually against his car, was Rayan. He was holding a paper cup of tea. He offered it to her without saying a word. She thanked him, still unsure why he was helping her. Rayan explained that the community center needed extra hands for sorting donate items, and if she was willing, she could volunteer a few hours a day. It wouldn't pay much, but it would give her food, a safe space, and small earnings. Amara agreed immediately. It wasn't just a chance to work, it was a chance to rebuild. Days turned into a routine. Amara volunteered diligently, showing warmth to everyone around her. People noticed her kindness, her work ethic, her gentle spirit. One evening, when Rayan arrived to pick up Noor from a nearby school event, he found Amara outside the center reading a donated children's book to a group of kids. She didn't see him standing there, watching with soft eyes. In that moment, something changed quietly inside him. Over the next few weeks, Rayan continued stopping by, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just checking in. Amara slowly began trusting him, sharing bits of her past, how she had left home years ago to build an independent life, how everything that once held her together had crumbled. Rayan never asked for details she didn't want to share. He just listened, offering the kind of silence that heals instead of breaks. One afternoon, the community center's director approached Rayan and mentioned how hard work Amara was, how she went beyond assigned tasks, how she never complained. She also mentioned that Amara had skill in stitching and repairing clothes. She often fixed torn donations, making them usable again. That caught Rayan's attention. His company employed hundreds of workers, but his corporate office lacked someone who could manage uniforms, minor repairs, and certain administrative tasks. A small role, but a necessary one, and maybe someone like Amara deserved a chance to start again. When he offered her the job a week later, Amara stared at him in disbelief. Her hands trembled again, this time not from hunger but from hope. A chance. A real chance. She accepted with tears in her eyes. Life shifted. She began earning steadily again. And with Rayan's help, she found a small studio apartment. The first night she slept there, she sat on the floor for nearly an hour, simply feeling the warmth of the place, the safety, the quiet pride in knowing she had a roof she could call her own. Rayan checked on her occasionally, offering help when needed, respecting her space always. What he didn't expect was how much Noor adored Amara. The little girl clung to her whenever she visited the office, telling her stories, asking her to braid her hair. Amara became a piece of the warmth Noor had lost when her mother passed away, and slowly, gently, something unspoken grew between Rayan and Amara. Not rushed, not demanded, simply present, like a soft light returning to a place long dimmed. Months later, during a winter evening, Rayan invited Amara to dinner with him and Noor. They walked through the softly lit streets, the air crisp, the sky painted in quiet blues. Over dinner, they laughed, shared stories they hadn't told before. And for the first time, Amara realized she was smiling without forcing it. And Rayan realized he hadn't felt this calm, this steady, this quietly content in years. By spring, Amara had fully rebuilt her life. She saved enough to buy a proper sewing machine, and soon she began offering tailoring services after work. Her confidence returned. Her eyes brightened. She no longer walked like someone carrying the weight of the world. One warm morning, she revisited the bakery where everything had begun. She bought a full loaf of bread, no coins, trembling in her hands this time. As she stepped outside, she saw Rayan waiting for her across the street, smiling softly, and in her heart, she knew kindness had changed the course of her life. But not just kindness, someone choosing to see her when the world chose to ignore her. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Silent Hope. Your support helps spread stories of compassion and humanity. Before we end, please comment below. Kindness changes everything, because sometimes a single slice of bread, A single moment of compassion, a single human choice, can rebuild an entire life.